It's Hollywood or history, unravel what they portray. Let's investigate, teaching truth, one frame at a time.
Welcome to the Hollywood or History Podcast, a podcast to help social studies teachers and teacher educators use film effectively in their classroom. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Roberts, and in each episode, we talk with a volume editor and lesson plan developer to determine the accuracy of their favorite films.
Hollywood or history, unravel what they portray. Let's investigate, teaching truth, one frame at a time.
Welcome to the Hollywood or History Podcast, the American History volume. This is chronologically the first book in the series. I have with me today Dr. Nancy Sardone, who wrote a lesson plan in the book. Welcome, Nancy. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Scott. Good to see you.
You too.
So I am educated in Massachusetts in the school system, and I got my undergraduate degree out of UMass Amherst in resource economics. I moved to the New York City area. I got my master's and doctorate from NYU in business education. And currently, I did work for years at Seton Hall University while I was getting my doctorate. And once I received that, I moved to Georgian Court University in Lakewood, New Jersey. It's a small regional Catholic institute. And that's where I have worked since 2008. I chief professor of education. So that's that was a good goal to achieve. And I primarily teach social studies methods. I teach integrating technology in the curriculum. I'm a director of teacher education. I'm involved in the New Jersey Council of Social Studies. We have a conference every fall at Rutgers University, which is widely attended by mostly secondary educators in the state of New Jersey. So yeah, that's I've written and published in numerous journals about social studies and social studies methods, and trying to figure out ways to make the subject more appealing, especially geography. That's what I've been working on for the last couple of years anyway, how to make that more engaging for students.
And you've written a lot of lesson plans in our Hollywood or History series as well.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and just start diving in. So we are actually discussing the first volume in the Hollywood or History series. It was edited by myself and my colleague, Charles Elfer, who couldn't be here today. And the U.S. History book has lessons for grades K-5 and 6-12. And what we did was we basically modeled the book chapters after the UCLA National Center for History in Schools. That was how we came up with our eras. And what we try to do is we try to have 2 lesson plans at least about each era in U.S. history, starting from the beginnings and ending up in the, at the time, 20th century, a little bit in the 21st century. So we have 23 lesson plans in the book. We have 10 elementary, 13 secondary focus lesson plans. And some of the films that the authors of the lesson plans developed include 12 Years a Slave, Gettysburg, Pocahontas, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and The Untouchables. And again, the publisher Information Age, who originally published the book, has been purchased by Emerald Publishing out in the UK. So Emerald is publishing this book as well. And you can find it on their website as well as anywhere where you can buy books. So why American history? So we'll talk about, our purposes first, and then we'll kind of talk about your lesson in a few minutes, Nancy. So we really, obviously, when we decided to do the Hollywood History series, the first thing that came to mind was American history, primarily because American history is taught in most grade levels, K-5, and then in the secondary world, middle school, high school. Obviously, we have in most states, it's very U.S. history focused from almost the beginning. The topic is in my expertise. And again, Nancy, I know you did a lot of work with American history as well. And again, the original lesson plans that I developed with the Hollywood History Strategy were based on U.S. history. So again, it was just a natural progression from the work that I had done previously to making this American history book. So what we want to talk about, though, is not necessarily the whole book itself, but a particular lesson plan that Nancy wrote about should I call it famous or infamous? We'll call it both, the famous / infamous Disney film Pocahontas. So Nancy, could you tell us a little bit more about the 1995 animated film Pocahontas?
Sure, sure. So just to give you an idea of why I selected the film, this was years ago, 1995. My daughter was young, too young at the time to sit through a feature movie at the theater. That's where everyone went at the time, to the theater, right? How things have changed. So anyway, I purchased a VHS copy of the film, and we watched it at home. And I was really struck by how beautiful, statuesque, and beautiful Pocahontas was. And I thought, as I've mentioned already too, like, what does she have, a glam squad in the village that she lives in? I mean, it just was like, it was so odd to me that it was that she was portrayed in this way. And so it wasn't just her beauty, it was the juxtaposition of how at the beginning of the movie she's so brave and fearless and strong. And then when she got around, the movie anyway perceives her as portrayed her as she got around men, she became kind of weakened by love. And I thought, God, what kind of a message are we sending? I mean, what was happening in this village was so traumatic, and yet she came off as kind of like vapid in a way of not recognizing that these strangers were there to, take all.
Right.
Winner take all. And so I kind of wondered about this film, as I wondered about other Disney films. It wasn't like this was this was anything new. But what was new is that my daughter, I have my daughter now, and I felt a sense of responsibility. And so that messaging stayed with me for a long time. And I had read on my own about prior to being approached by you for the Hollywood and History series, I, did research on my own, finding that, Captain John Smith actually wrote about his time in the New World, and how there was just so many disparities between the truth and what was portrayed compared to what was portrayed in the film. So that's I just wondered about what messages that we're sending to young people about this thing called love.
Right.
It just seemed to stay with me for whatever reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And again, when I actually use your lesson plan to introduce the Hollywood history strategy to my undergraduate education students, that's the one that I've selected of all the ones that have been written. I found yours to be very straightforward. You came up with, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, some great primary sources, secondary sources, really looking at both the quote unquote relationship that John Smith and Pocahontas had in the film compared to real life, but also, the myth making of American history and the myth of Pocahontas saving John Smith from execution that has found its way in our common knowledge of U.S. history, which we don't want to ruin the plot yet, but which may or may not be true. So I found it a great way to teach especially my future elementary school teachers about myths in U.S. history and how they become part of our, national identity, whether they're, quote unquote true or not. So definitely a great lesson to use. And again, for any professor of education that would like to bring Hollywood history to your methods class, I highly recommend using Nancy's lesson because, again, it is straightforward, easy for my students to understand, inquiry, and the actual Hollywood history strategy as well. So, Nancy, we have already gone over in prior episodes the step-by-step approach to Hollywood history in hopes that any teacher can use our work, but they can also make their own lesson plans based on the strategy as well. So the first thing we talk about is the first step, right? Which is the selections, right? We want our teachers to use state standards and national standards when they develop a Hollywood or history lesson in order to, back up the rationale for it, right? We're basically teaching about the state standard, and we're going to do it with this inquiry approach. So can you tell the audience a little bit about the different state standards and national standards that you may have used in developing the lesson plan for Pocahontas?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, Tim. I'm very flattered that you picked my lesson to model, a model for your students. So thank you for that. Yeah, sure. So I picked 3 different states, California, New Jersey, and Virginia. I thought that they were really, spot on. So the California is K62. So let me just paraphrase, but its students will know triumphs in American legends and historical accounts through stories such as, and people, such as Pocahontas. New Jersey, where I live, students will explain how folklore contributes to the American national heritage. Again, these are paraphrased just for clarity purposes and shortening. And Virginia, students will demonstrate knowledge of the first permanent English settlement in America. And describe the interaction. So I thought, man, that standard right there is perfect for the events that happened, the reasons that the English came, to the New World. I thought that you could go much deeper using that standard compared to what I did. I concentrated really on this, on this quote unquote love story or this romanticized version, so that I could get across to students that at a young age that filmmakers take poetic license. Don't believe what you see. You have to, you have the opportunity to engage in your own kind of research after watching such a film. Any kind of, unfortunately, any film seems to have romanticized versions, I guess for appeal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And for all my Michigan listeners, we definitely can use this lesson plan for elementary, 4th and 5th, but also the high school U.S. history as well. So you can definitely adapt it to meet those learning needs of both elementary and secondary students. So, and you also had some C3 standards. Can you talk a little bit about the C3 framework you used?
Yeah, for sure. Most of them are in the history, describe how people's perspectives shape the historical sources they created, which is D2, history 635, grades 3 through 5. And then again, another history, D2, history 10. 3.5, 3-5, compare information provided by different historical sources about the past. I thought that one was terrific. Use of evidence to support claims in response to compelling questions, I think is really important, that we don't just, that we teach students to back up their claims, have evidence for what they are making a statement on instead of just blanket statements. Construct arguments using claims and evidence, and understand that argument is not the person who screams the loudest. Arguments are should be used not just in a history course, but should be used always to represent pros and cons in a particular point of view, and having evidence to back up claims. And then the multiple sources point of that is really important. As I mentioned earlier, the difference in primary and secondary sources and how they can help to corroborate or dispute a claim.
Right. Yep. And listeners, you will have access to this PowerPoint in the show notes, and you can see the standards that Nancy selected, both the state and the national ones. Through the C3 framework for national, and then the different states. And again, most states, they certainly talk about Pocahontas. So I think where in the country, you can certainly use this lesson. In fact, I did some prior work. There are only 61 counties in the United States named in honor of a woman, and Pocahontas takes the lead with 2 counties that were named after her. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So the next thing we want to talk about is we want our teachers to be able to use the standards first, right, to make sure they have a good framework for this type of lesson. But then they have to find movie clips, so clips from the film that go along with the standards. Can you talk a little bit more about the movie clips that you selected from Pocahontas to go along with this lesson?
Yeah, sure. So, so California students will know the triumph in American legends, such as Pocahontas. I actually like a clip, right? It's really close to the beginning of the movie. I call it "Who Was Pocahontas?" It's like timestamp. Just to give an idea, I do timestamps like 7 minutes and 30 seconds to 12 minutes. So we're looking at a 5-minute clip, which basically depicts her as strong. She's talking with her friend whose name I forgot, but and she's seen by herself in her canoe, paddling in the river, and she's just a very spiritual, full of wonderment. And she's her young woman friend said to her, or girlfriend said to her, you should marry Coco. And she said, I don't want to marry him. So, she comes across as so strong. So that's what I want students to see right in the beginning. This juxtaposition between her, she changes. And not necessarily, in my opinion, for the better. So, right. And then the New Jersey standard, students will explain how folklore contributes to the American national heritage. I wanted to show two clips. One is, the famous one where Pocahontas and Captain John Smith kiss. That's these can all be found on YouTube as well as in the film. And then Pocahontas Savages Part 2 and Pocahontas' Sacrifice, another YouTube clip that really talks about this folklore, because neither are true that occurred, according to both, primary source. Captain John Smith himself doesn't speak of this love affair. And also secondary sources such as Jean Fritz and Camilla Townsend speak that it didn't happen. So that's how folklore happens. We see something, it's fantastical, we believe it because we don't know not to believe it, And then the third, Virginia. I really like this one. I really love this Virginia standard. Right. It's spot on for this endeavor.
Yeah.
To be honest, but it's students will demonstrate knowledge of the first permanent English settlement in America just by describing the interaction. So right from the start, the lyrics, the opening lyrics and song and lyrics called the Virginia Company. So I say play that to basically 2 minutes, from the start of the film to 2 minutes, and get a copy, which is easy to do on YouTube. They have the transcript with it. You can get the lyrics to the film, which really start. It really tells you right from the start what the Englishmen are after. Riches and gold and land. And then next is I Am John Smith, which is like a 2-minute clip, again on YouTube. And then the third, Savages, to show the interaction between the Englishmen and the indigenous folks.
Yeah, and I have been using these clips from at least 2020-ish. And the good news is those YouTube clips have not gone away. Easy to find. But again, you do provide timestamps if you have a physical copy of the film, or if you need to use the old library VHS version of it. Right. And again, every lesson plan in the book series has either the YouTube clips or the timestamp or both, to help teachers find these specific scenes that we would like them to use to go through the process. Okay, so our second step in the Hollywood history strategy is to develop an interesting question. Again, we already give you that main compelling question in every lesson: Hollywood or history. Hollywood meaning everything about this movie is inaccurate or fake. History, everything about this movie is accurate. Is like you're going back in time and seeing Pocahontas and John Smith, or somewhere in between. But we also have some sub-questions that we ask authors to include in the lesson plan as well. In the C3 framework, those are called supporting questions. And I was just wondering, Nancy, if you could talk a little bit about some of those supporting questions that you wrote for this lesson plan.
Sure, happy to. So just to reiterate, in general, what I want students to do is to experience the importance in consulting both primary and secondary sources to help to corroborate or contradict information, learn how historical characters like Pocahontas actually became folklore, and what are the reasons why film producers create folklore. That's what I want them to see, so that they become informed citizens of what they're, informed consumers, I should say. In terms of the film Pocahontas, I start with questions to set the stage of basic information, like who was Pocahontas, who was Captain John Smith, who was Chief Powhatan, why did the English sail to the New World and settle in Jamestown? Like, what are the reasons behind that? And then I moved to more sophisticated questions throughout the lesson, depending on the age of the students, really, but asking students to consider, deeper implications, such as, is the filmmaker's visual portrayal of Pocahontas similar or different to that of historians?
Mhm.
The thing is Captain John Smith's description of his capture. This is really interesting. Is his description of his capture similar or different to that of historians? Is the filmmaker's active portrayal of the relationship between Pocahontas and Captain Smith similar or different to that of historians? And did the filmmakers use artistic license to simply embellish the storyline, or did they rewrite history?
Mhm.
So this lesson in particular, and you can go in many directions, but this lesson in particular, this is 1 to 2 lessons, focuses on this romantic relationship between Pocahontas and Smith, and then starts to get into the capture and how things are really different in the capture.
Yeah. And I think yeah, definitely. I think at this point that we should probably do just a slight disclaimer to our audience. In your lesson plan, you do talk a little bit about the romance between Pocahontas and John Smith, because obviously it's in the movie. So, why wouldn't you? But again, this lesson's more for elementary level. So do you have any suggestions for those teachers that may be just a little bit trepidatious about talking about a romantic relationship between two historical figures to like a group of 3rd graders or 4th graders that you can, they can discuss a little bit, like how you can go around it? Are there certain scenes that you would use or not use? Anything like that?
Well, they don't have to address it at all. They don't really, there's so many things that you can do in with this particular film to show how filmmakers in general, and I'm not picking on Disney in particular, right? How filmmakers take poetic license and to sell their film. And we have to understand that this is a business, right? Yeah, it's entertainment, but entertainment is a business. So they could, elementary teachers who aren't interested in the romance for whatever reasons that they have, I get it.
Yeah.
I would work on the capture of John Smith. I honestly would go from that point of view, because his historical account, from 1608, A True Relation. It's online. It's AmericanJourneys.org. Really is where you can find. I mean, I have a reference page, but you could focus on that. I think that's interesting. I think that you could focus on the reasons that the English came to the new land. They never told, obviously, they never told the chief, why they were there. They were, the Indians, the term we used at the time, the Indians, didn't really understand how precious what they had was, and that other people didn't want to share it. They wanted to have it. They wanted to possess it.
Yeah.
And so you could certainly focus on that in terms of the reasons, and then how the village and the natives were behaving. There's a lot of things that you could do, just to give you an idea.
Yeah. And with my students, I show them both. I show them the romantic relationship, because again, when you look at the primary second sources, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, there wasn't a romantic relationship. So I think it's important for my university students to understand that. When they ask, should I show the tree pushing them together to smooch? I'm like, well, you just, fast forward to the next scene where, he gets captured.
Right.
Or again, the myth of Pocahontas saving John Smith from execution. They do talk about she loves him, but there's nothing that's, I don't think, outside the realm of what you can show elementary school kids, because again, you're trying to show them the myth, and then using your primary secondary sources that you found to dispel, if you will, that Pocahontas saved John Smith from execution. So again, just wanted to bring it up. We have different school districts, different type of teachers, and again, this is just a good point to even though we give you a scripted lesson in all of these books, we certainly encourage teachers to adapt the lesson, change it to meet the needs of their students, and again, what they feel comfortable with. Even though obviously the romance is the main point of the Disney film, it seems like when you watch the entire thing. Great. So let's talk a little bit more about step 3. So we've already talked a little bit about the sources and selecting your sources. We want teachers to use at least one primary source and one secondary source, especially when it comes to American or world history. So can you talk a little bit more about the different sources that you selected for your lesson plan?
Yeah, sure. So I found historical societies to be really helpful, such as the Jamestown Historical Society and then the Virginia History site. I found the National Park Service to be very helpful, Pocahontas, Her Life and Legend. 3 books, The Double Life of Pocahontas by Jean Fritz, 1983. As I mentioned, The True Relation by Captain John Smith, 1608, which is online. Pocahontas and the Powhatan Dilemma by Camilla Townsend, 2004. Of course, the film or film clips. The New York Times. Believe it or not, there's a lot. You have to look, but there is a lot. And blogs. I have a blog, Disney's photo gallery from the film, so that students can see. Instead of watching, they could maybe look at animated photos captured from the film.
Yep. And again, in all the lesson plans, we do provide these sources for you. For those who are listening or watching the podcast, you'll get the PowerPoint that we're using as a guide. And Nancy did provide links to some of these sources on that PowerPoint as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about step 4. So step 4 is develop a graphic organizer. We certainly encourage teachers whenever you do an inquiry-based activity that you give your kids something to help them organize, compare, contrast, that kind of thing. In every lesson of the Hollywood or History book series, we do have a standard common graphic organizer that I developed many, many moons ago. We encourage all of our authors to use that as a guide, but certainly they have the ability to adapt, change, add to that kind of thing to the organizer. So do you want to talk a little bit about the organizer that you use for your lesson?
Sure. So it's your standard 3 columns, and you're basically evaluating the primary source, the film, and the secondary source. And then at the bottom, there's a horizontal block that's asking, what do you think? Is this a Hollywood version of the story, or is this the historical truth of the story? So I did, as I said, I did focus on the romance aspect of their relationship. So I'm asking, the Disney film Pocahontas is summarized as an English soldier and the daughter of a powerful chief share a romance when English colonists invade 17th century Virginia. The goal of this assignment below is to determine if this film summary conveys the truth of what happened. You are asked to watch specific film clips and then investigate the truth using primary and secondary historical sources. So it's your standard 3 column with the film in the middle and then a block underneath it for students to give their view of what they think provided, backed up with evidence.
Yep, definitely. So we have gotten to the point where we've selected standards, we selected film clips, we've selected primary and secondary sources. We came up with a graphic organizer. Now we actually get to show the film, which is step 5. So we talked a little bit about the scenes that you selected, but can you talk a little bit more about those film clips in particular, especially when it comes to again, meeting those standards? Or is there anything you want to add to what you've already said about?
Yeah, I've already spoken about the first 2 clips. One is to show Pocahontas as a beautiful and statuesque person. Another is to show her emerging as a woman where she kisses John Smith. And the third is, I think you mentioned, but to show her loyalty to Captain Smith, she's seen running along the cliffs at top speed. She has heard that her love is going to be executed on the top of the bluff at dawn in front of an army of colonists who had come to rescue him and wage war. Pocahontas proclaims her love and saves him from death. So that's right from the film. So those are the three. And again, and I sliced out this lesson plan to focus on this. Again, it's a tight lesson plan. But again, you could focus on, there's much to focus on in this film, not just this aspect.
Yep. And you have viewers and listeners, you have access to the film clips on this PowerPoint that, again, you'll have access to.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about those primary sources that you found. I really enjoyed the primary sources that you used for the lesson. I think they're really, really, like you said, like a tight lesson. They really help our students, especially when you're starting to learn the strategy, understand how you can use a primary source and a secondary source to evaluate a film clip for accuracy. So you can talk a little bit more about one of the primary sources that you selected?
Yeah, sure. So it's an excerpt from A True Relation from Captain John Smith, 1608. And he does play up the romantic relationship between the two of them. And this is I'm paraphrasing. Chief Powhatan sends his daughter, a child of 10 years, along with a trusted messenger, Rahant. Rahant tells Smith how Powhatan loved and respected him. And the chief is sending his child to Smith, which has Smith musing, perhaps that she was sent to him as a present.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as you mentioned, older elementary.
Right, of course. And again, this is a clip from his diary. They could have thought that she would be a good interpreter because, kids can learn a new language a little bit more quickly than adults. So there's all sorts of reasons why this was written by Smith. And again, I think it's a good primary source to really especially show the age difference between what happened in real life and then kind of what you see in the film. The film, they look like they're pretty, close to the same age. Not a big age discrepancy as we see here. And again, just a reminder to our listeners, when you do use primary sources, especially primary sources from the 16, 17, 1800s, according to Sam Weinberg, you can certainly change the reading ability of these primary sources, put it in a program that can help your students read it, especially at the 4th, 5th grade level. But you always want to have that actual primary source connected to your revision to really make sure that you're using a primary source, not necessarily a primary source that has been changed, if you will, to meet the reading needs of your students. So we definitely want to make sure that we keep that original source with it, but you can certainly adapt the language as needed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about your secondary source. So again, we encourage our authors to consider using the basic textbook, the social studies or history textbook that they're using. I know in Michigan, we have the Michigan Open Book Project. That is a free textbook series that you can, just download for your students to use. Obviously, different states have different textbooks that they use, but we can also use a variety of different secondary sources. So you did go beyond the standard textbook for your lesson. Can you talk a little bit more about the secondary sources that you included?
Sure. So to refute Pocahontas as this glammed up version, we can use the Disney's photo gallery from the film. We can also use the National Park Service. To refute her romantic relationship with John Smith, Camilla Townsend, and again, this is just an excerpt, paraphrased excerpt from her work, Pocahontas and the Powhatan Dilemma. Pocahontas married Kokum. He was a warrior from the nearby nation, and Pocahontas married Kokum by choice, and within a few years, he is just said to have disappeared. Another excerpt earlier in the book says Pocahontas was only about 10 years old at the time of this occurrence. And in all of Smith's early writing from 1608 to 12, he never wrote about the story of Pocahontas' profession of her love for him while saving him from death. So there you go.
Yep. So again, for, especially if you're going to try this strategy out, it's succinct. These sources really help your students understand we'll just say potential. We're not going to do it yet, not to bury the lead. Potential inaccuracies that we see or potentially see in Pocahontas. And again, these sources are short, succinct, and really help your students, either the fourth or fifth graders or your college students, understand how to use this activity. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about step 8. So what I really want the listeners to know is when you do a Hollywood or history lesson from any book in the series, you want your students to be able to use primary and secondary sources as evidence to determine the accuracy of the film or the film clip that you're using. You do not want to tell your students what the correct answer is, because really there's no correct answer. It's just what they think based on evidence. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to hold off 1 minute to talk about what you think, Nancy, as far as how accurate you think the movie is. But again, because we may have listeners who are not teachers, are just interested in history and Hollywood film. So we, as the expert, will give you a chance to talk about how accurate you think the film is based on your knowledge of the primary and secondary sources. But with students, you obviously want them to watch the film, read the primary and secondary sources, and then come up with a answer using evidence about how accurate that they think it is, usually through the use of a continuum. Like I said earlier, 100% history means everything about this movie is true. It's like you went back in time. 100% Hollywood, everything about this movie is inaccurate. Like there's nothing about this movie that's correct, or somewhere in between. And again, usually students, even with Pocahontas, for example, there's some kernels of truth that don't necessarily make it all, at least in our opinions, all Hollywood, even though with the talking trees and dancing raccoons, it's very close.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Nancy? Do you think when it comes to this continuum, what would you consider the accuracy of this film based on 100% Hollywood, 100% history, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So, the evidence does show that Disney created a romanticized version of the Pocahontas story. So what's in the film is about their relationship is totally inaccurate. Then the bigger question is, I think the bigger question is, did the film rewrite history? Mm-hmm. And I say probably not. They probably didn't rewrite history. Mm-hmm. But this love story could create, it could deliver an incorrect message about this period of time for young people who watch this film. So I'm kind of looking at the bigger point of, did we rewrite history? Probably not. I think that there's a lot of truth in the film. I think that the occurrence of the Englishmen coming to the New World looking for riches and looking for new land and was accurate. I think the lyrics of the film, as I said before, the opening lyrics and song, I think say a lot. I think that's a study. That would be a great study. And that is accurate. So it's piecemeal. It depends on which, this is only one lesson that I created. Had I created a series of lessons, I think that you could better answer that question. Is it 50% true, 100% true, what have you? But I think there are certain aspects of it that are totally false, like this, romance. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And Colacom was murdered or killed in the movie, and obviously he disappeared in real life. We don't really know.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yes. That's
which
false.
Sets the stage for John Smith's capture, right? So we want you see
that could be a focus too. That would be excellent. He does write about that. John Smith does write about that. So again, if someone is not interested in leading a lesson on a romance, that would be a great place. So.
And that's why I use my stance. We really look at his account of his cat being captured, the secondary source being captured, and then showing that with the film. But honestly, I didn't realize that Colacom did not get that he disappeared. I thought I thought he got killed. So even I'm not an expert in the history of
According to Townsend, he just disappeared. But she was married to him. So
interesting. Very.
Yeah.
So for step 9 in the Hollywood history, we do our conclusion. The basic conclusion, which I've spoke about in other episodes, includes this idea of either like a line of contention, where you basically put a line with 100% Hollywood on your whiteboard, 100% history on your whiteboard, and then put like 75% history, 50% history, and you have your students come up to the board and stand in the continuum where they think the movie or the movie clip falls. We've also used things like the 4 corners activity, where we had students basically, again, you put 100% Hollywood on one corner, 75% Hollywood on another corner, 50% Hollywood, 25% Hollywood, and your students go to the corner of your classroom where they think the movie falls. But I know in your lesson plan, you went above and beyond that, which is great, to where students were able to do some sort of, in the C3 framework, take action, right? And do something with what they learned. So can you talk a little bit more about your conclusion when it comes to this lesson plan?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that what you want students to do, especially younger students, is to get involved in, maybe hands-on activities. So at the time, I had a mixed group. I forget what I did. I think I had a mixed group of elementary and early childhood. Our early childhood program goes to grade 3. I call it 3 to 3. It's age 3 through grade 3. And then that overlaps in New Jersey with elementary, which is K through 6. So anyway, I think what happened was I had a few students that were in the elementary program in my class that semester for whatever reason. So I found this idea to perform shadow puppetry, which is very old, and my college students had a great time doing it. So they, it's creating silhouettes and shadows and whatnot, and to reenact a myth and then reenact a myth and then act out the truth, what they believed the truth was based on their investigation into the secondary sources. Of course, the myth was much more fantastical to play out, right? Which is how myths are created. They get, they're enticing, So that would be one. So the shadow puppetry, and there's a lot of information online about shadow puppetry, from everything from how to set up a stage to the lighting to the actual silhouettes. And there's actual silhouettes online, the black outline, and you could download them and print them out, or you could create them certainly with construction paper, what have you. And also you could have students write an essay explaining why Disney created a romanticized version. You could have them send a letter to the head of a production company or to the filmmakers, explaining that they like the romanticized version, or that they didn't like it, or that they see harm with it, or what have you. So it's a way of stepping forward and getting their belief systems, give light to their belief systems, which I think is important. Because don't forget, when we ask them to create this this graphic organizer, they have a reader of 1, which is you, the instructor, right? Their teacher. But when we have a puppet show going on, it's everyone in the class watching and listening. We have, if they write a letter, they have an outlet for their expression. And I think that's important. You shouldn't always be the creator and the evaluator for your students.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And like I said, I really appreciate you and the other authors taking this initial idea, Hollywood history, and really running with it and adapting it to your teaching style, the needs of your students. And again, there's just so much creativity in these lessons than what I even came up with when I actually developed the strategy. I was pretty much, how accurate is this film? Stand up next to the board, write the producers. But y'all have done a great job, all the authors, of really expanding this idea to make it that much more meaningful to our students. And again, you certainly did that, because I think your lesson's like either first or second in the book. So great.
I feel honored. I feel very honored. Yeah.
Well, we also have on the PowerPoint that you'll have access to, listener. We have the materials list that Nancy came up with. We have a reference list for defining these primary and secondary sources, as well as some other information about how to use film in the classroom and about Pocahontas itself. So we're at the point of the podcast, Nancy, where you get a chance to promote anything or plug anything that's coming up in your career.
Yes, thank you. So I'm working on, as I mentioned at the beginning of the cast, Hollywood or History, an inquiry-based strategy for using film clips to teach geography. So this was a little bit different of a twist. So let me give you an idea. Let me give you two ideas, if I could, of what I've come up with. So there's 17 lesson plans in this book so far, anyway. It includes games, full lecture notes, activities, Hollywood film clips, documentary clips, and uses of sources, government sites like NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric, I forget the last day. Let's just call it association or agency.
Right.
And dozens upon dozens and dozens of questions for inquiry and discussion. So here's one lesson for the younger group. So I selected film clips from Frozen and I compared to Moana to help students understand the difference in climate and learn about location. Through studying climate zones, longitude, latitude, hemispheres, oceans, continents, and also to understand that students learn that filmmakers often use real places as their setting for their film, even when it's animated. So I don't want students to think this is just out of the imagination always. Setting isn't always out of the imagination of the filmmaker. It's based on a real place. So that's important. And that kind of sets the ground for this endeavor in geography. So another lesson uses a film clip and lots of images from SpongeBob SquarePants to illustrate the setting of Bikini Bottom as the real life setting of the Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. And this is where U.S. nuclear testing occurred in the late 40s, actually 46 through 58.
Right.
And so what we want, this is obviously for older students, high school, and students would analyze the effects of catastrophic environmental and technological events on human settlements and migration, what the people of the Bikini Atoll were told versus what the truth was, why the United States actually performed nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands, why was that chosen? I think is really fascinating. And I think the United States tried very hard to find a remote location. Come to find out, is any location really all that remote?
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
And actually, we're far more populated now than we were in the 1950s. So, how does this testing actually even happen now that we have even more advancements in technology? Yeah. So anyway, those are two examples of the lesson plans that will appear in the geography edition. So I'm very excited about it.
Great.
It's been, as you mentioned earlier, this has been a tremendously creative endeavor. And I invite every teacher to sit down and to analyze any film and figure out what kind of clips. You don't have to have the whole film. You don't have to show the whole film and get the rights to show the film. And you can play, 10 minutes in 2-minute increments of film clips to show your point that you're trying to make. And I think kids are very excited to see, we watched Frozen today. Oh, Moana. Oh, SpongeBob. And I think these film clips can bring engagement and kind of create a spirit among students who most have seen these clips, most have seen these films. And frankly, they don't even have to watch the whole film to get the point. If you choose the clips, if you precisely choose the right clips, they don't really need the whole film.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you've written a lot of lesson plans, like I said, in the book series. And a lot of times you invite either a classroom teacher or one of your student teachers to work on the lesson plan with you. Not to give, you don't have to give the volume, but is there? Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the other films that you and your collaborators have looked at in the series?
Oh my gosh, let me think for a minute.
I know in the cartoon book you have one about Bikini Bottom and SpongeBob.
Yeah. I also have The Simpsons. Was it The Simpsons on the Salem witch trials? That was The Simpsons. That was really interesting. Oh gosh, Scott, you're. There's a couple in the world history book. Eva Peron.
Yep.
What was that? Eva Peron. That was really interesting.
That was a very interesting one. Did you do Brave as well? Did you do one about Brave?
Oh, Brave. Oh, in the geography book, yes, I have Journey to the Center of the Earth with Brendan Fraser. Remember that movie years ago? Yeah. Actually, there's great stuff in that book. A lot of it is truth.
Yeah.
So Journey to the Center of the Earth, Brave, Ferdinand the Bull. Yep. I take this tour around Ronda, Spain, which is fascinating. What else? Earthquake, the movie. Earthquake. A lot. Let me if I can real quick.
Sure. Well, you've contributed so much to the series. I want you to be able to plug any of those lessons that you did, because I know you worked hard on them along with the student teachers and the teachers that you brought along with you.
Yes, we've had a great time, frankly. Let me move back. Let's see what else. We're working on two people that I've been working with. Barbara Cruz and Jing Yang wrote a fantastic lesson plan on the true cost of fashion, fast fashion.
Okay.
Using the documentary True Cost, Jurassic Park, Avatar, Wall-E, Twister, Roots. There's a lesson plan on Roots that deals with geography. So everything has this little twist toward geography. The movie San Andreas with The Rock Johnson. Yep. Carmen Sandiego even shows up in her in the search for crime. So yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Great topics. And then again, just I have a new book coming out through the National Council for Social Studies, not about Hollywood or history, but about using film effectively with the C3 framework. Nancy was so kind to basically take the Pocahontas lesson she wrote for Hollywood history and adapt that lesson to meet the C3 framework specifically. So you can find the adapted Pocahontas book, not in a new book that's coming out through NCSS called C3 Framework in Hollywood Film. And Nancy has an appendix in that book using the Pocahontas concept, but just rewritten in a way that you can go step by step with the C3 framework. Based on the C3 teachers' lesson plans, et cetera. So that will be coming out sometime this year. So to the listeners, if you have any questions for myself or Nancy about her lesson plan, about her upcoming geography book, please email us at hollywoodorhistorypodcast@gmail.com. And we will be happy to answer those questions. Once again, any questions you may have about the Pocahontas lesson, the American History volume, the upcoming NCSS book, again, please contact us at hollywoodorhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Nancy, it's been a pleasure talking to you this afternoon. And thank you so much for your continued support and amazing ideas that you've done thus far with the Hollywood History series.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Hollywood History volumes are now published by Emerald Publishing out of the UK. All volumes can be purchased on Emerald's website or anywhere books are sold. If the innovative ideas discussed in the podcast have led you or a family member to consider earning an undergraduate or graduate degree in education from Central Michigan University, we encourage you to review the links in the show notes or contact host Dr. Scott Roberts at rober4s@cmich.edu. We offer undergraduate degrees in general and special education at the elementary level, secondary disciplines including social studies, and graduate degrees in curriculum and instruction, instructional technology, literacy, health and PE, and special education. We also have accelerated teacher certification programs for those with undergraduate degrees in something other than education who want to become excellent teachers in the state of Michigan.